Hello there everyone, it is Toby from TIJ Music and welcome to a brand new video. Today it is time for an album review, one I'm really excited to get into because I have not done any Judas Priest content on the channel yet. It's been a band that I've wanted to look into for a long time in terms of album reviews, and today I've got a list of about 30 albums now that I want to review on the channel, and I've said, I'll tell you what, let's look at this one. Judas Priest, British Steel, what an album. 1980, 20th of April 1980 this was released. Came after the live album Unleashed in the East from 1979. That performed very well, of course. And the studio album Killing Machine, also known as Hell Bent for Leather, in the US in 1978. Well, the album saw a commercial sound, much like on Killing Machine, but the album does show some darker themes with some of the heavier tracks. Just go through the track list now. So on side one, as you can see, we've got Rapid Fire, Metal Gods, Breaking the Law, Grinder, and the side ends in United. Then side two, we've got You Don't Have to Be Old to Be Wise, and then it is Must Be Living After Midnight next, and then The Rage and Steal It to finish it off. Yes, that is correct. 9 tracks on this album. Rob Halford on lead vocals, Glenn Tipton and Downing on lead guitars, Ian Hill on bass, and Dave Holland making his first appearance for the band on drums, taking over from Les Binks, who appeared on Stained Class. And Killing Machine. It's the band's 6th studio album, recorded in December 1979 at Tittenhurst Park, which was the home of former Beatle Ringo Starr. And interestingly, they used analogue recording methods, because obviously you couldn't go on the internet and download a sample back in those days, of smashing milk bottles and snooker cues and trays of cutlery. The milk bottles for Breaking the Law, and then the snooker cues and the trays of cutlery for Metal Gods. That was very interesting to hear. The album was produced as well by Tom Allom, who has produced all of their albums from the 80s and also produced Firepower. I think he produced from this album up to Ram It Down, didn't produce Painkiller, and then nothing after that as well until the Firepower album. And the album cover, so iconic, really iconic. It was made by Roslaw Sayobo. Again, I'm reading my notes on the side. For those of you who never watched a video of mine before, I do have notes by the side of me. So just to... I mean, how am I going to remember the name? Roslaw Sayobo. A Polish cover designer who works the chief artistic director at CBS from 72 to 88. With the album actually featuring his own hand. Now, originally I did watch a review of the album earlier, and someone said that there was blood coming from the hand, but for some reason they couldn't use it, so it was just this one used. And he also designed the Judas Priest covers for Killing Machine and Stained Class. The album was released in the UK. I found this quite a funny fact. Released in the UK at a discount for £3.99 with the slogan British Steel, but of course with the Steel spelled S-T-E-A-L, because it was so cheap. But I mean, £3.99. I'd certainly pay that these days for an album like this. Peaked at number 4 in the UK albums chart, and for those of you who are interested, it trailed 12 gold bars by Status Quo, Duke by Genesis, and then Rolls Royce Greatest Hits, which was number 1. It was only number 4 for 1 week, went down to number 8 I think from them, but it was in the charts for 18 weeks, so did fairly well. And whilst it still is the highest charting Judas Priest album in the UK of all time. Firepower though did go to number 5 in 2018, so that's not too far off Judas Priest's British Steel. It went platinum in the US, selling 1 million copies. Did get to number 34 in the Billboard 200, and it did go to silver in the UK. It produced 3 singles, the first of them being Breaking the Law, then United and Living After Midnight. Breaking the Law and Living After Midnight both went to number 12 in the UK charts. United went to number 26 in the UK charts. And the album received fairly positive reviews, which is bloody surprising for a rock album. Many rock albums I reviewed got terrible reviews at the time. Retrospectively, it got better. That being said, there are 2 varying reviews I'm going to mention here. All Music gave the album a 5 out of 5, and Sputnik Music gave the album only a 2 out of 5, because apparently the band does not do very well musically at all. Interesting. Very interesting. But initially, before I go into the tracks of this album, I think some of the tracks do teeter on pop rock. This is meant to be a heavy metal album. That's what it's described as, but a few of the tracks, particularly the singles, really, you have to say, do teeter onto the pop rock genre, but there are some great heavy metal classics here, and this is a brilliant album. I was very surprised, actually, by the verdict I gave for this album. So, let's get into the tracks, shall we, of this album. Just scroll down on my notes here, and we'll start with track 1, Rapid Fire. Rapidly into the album. What a fantastic track. Brilliant. What a start to the album. A great high tempo, heavy track. KK Dennon actually said to Billboard that it's unusual in the way that it just gets going pretty fast. Priest was always into a big intro, wasn't it? All dramatic and then getting into it. But no, this was just, right, let's go. Let's get on with it. Pounding the world like a battering ram. Absolutely fantastic. I think this is one of Judas Priest's better tracks of all time, despite it being so simple. It's so simple and it's a really good track. So I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. Brilliant track. Fantastic. Love Rapid Fire. Then we move on to track 2, Metal Gods. Another brilliant heavy track, a far lower tempo to what we'd seen on Rapid Fire. The sci-fi themes with robots, sci-fi and Metal Gods, of course. We all know that the motivation behind this song was really to give Rob Halford a nickname, which of course his nickname is now the Metal God. Much lower tempo, as I've said, compared to the last track, and it sounds really aggressive. And it's also got that catchy nature, as I said before. They use snooker cues and basically they just get cutlery out the drawers and start whacking it on the table just to get the sounds that they got on Metal Gods, which I just think was fantastic. And what I hadn't mentioned before, and of course, is the British Steel album. I don't really know the origins of it, apart from the fact that a lot of the band, particularly Rob Halford, grew up in the West Midlands, which is where I'm from, and it had a big steel-making industry back at this time, and when they were youngsters. So I'm guessing that was the inspiration behind the title of this album, because to go from Stained Classed and Killing Machine and Sin After Sin and Sad Wings of Destiny to British Steel, I always found that a bit weird, and especially going from that to Point of Entry. I mean, this is very much an end of an era for Judas Priest, because after this we had Point of Entry. Well, I haven't heard all of Point of Entry, so I can't comment on it all, but what I have heard, maybe not the best album of all time, but obviously more commercialised sound with Metal God, you can tell, but a great guitar solo at the end of the track, absolutely awesome. So this one's going to get another 10 out of 10, because those two tracks to start the album, I personally think, are two of the best rock tracks of all time, two of the best metal tracks of all time. We move on to track 3 then, which was Breaking the Law, one we really, 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 really don't have to hear again. But if we take it at face value, pretending that it's not been overplayed and overplayed and overplayed, it's another great track. I've rated it a little lower at 9 just because I don't have to hear it again. But ultimately, that commercial sound, which was coming at the time, we got a lot of bands, Kiss, we're going in that route. 1978, Love Gun, that was a little bit commercialised. 1979, Dynasty, definitely. And then 1980s, Unmasked. For any of you that know Kiss, I don't need to say anymore. Queen, 1978, we had Jazz, and then 1980, we had The Game and Flash Gordon. I mean, Queen was the obvious example going into the 80s that stuff was going to get more commercialised. Remember on their albums, they used to put no synthesizers. It was a bit of a running joke. And then, of course, that's exactly what they went into. But bands like Priest, I suppose you could say, Motorhead, AC/DC, etc., etc., kept their heavy metal roots. But ultimately, you had to adapt. You had to adapt by this point to have the odd single. And that's exactly what Breaking the Law is. But an absolutely great track. As I've just said, it opened Priest up to such a big audience. It's actually got more than 100 million streams on Spotify, double any other track on Spotify, despite Painkiller being really popular. But personally, I haven't really got that much love for Painkiller. I don't mind some of the tracks on the Painkiller album. A Touch of Evil is brilliant. I actually think it's better than the title track, but that's one that's liked by a lot of people. I think that's got just over 50 million hits on Spotify, but Breaking the Law's got 100 million streams. But, a great driving track, to say the least. I love driving to Breaking the Law. It's brilliant, and great guitar work once again. So track 4, the penultimate track of side 1, is Grinder, one of the most underrated classics, I think, on the album. I just love the ripping guitar at the start on the start of the track. Do 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 do. I think it's great. I really do think it's great. A good catchy track, as I've said before. This was inspired by AC/DC, according to Rob Halford, because Judas Priest did support AC/DC on some of their 1979 tour dates. And they wanted that kind of 4/4 rhythm, that basic rhythm that I love AC/DC so much for. And again, I've got a Highway to Hell. Oh, Angus Young is being a bit stretched there. Won't put that to any weight I've put on during lockdown. But a great track. AC/DC they supported AC/DC on the 79 tour. And basically this 4/4 beat that was put into tracks like Grinder down in for commercialised metal a lot, and I think it absolutely did. It's a great track. I'm going to say this one's a 9 out of 10. Really enjoy Grinder. And then we look at what is the only real weak spot on the album, and I don't really get why it was in, to be honest. There's a lot of people that don't like this, and I'm kind of in that same boat, and that is United. Oh, God. United, United, United. It's like going to Man United game. I mean, alright, it's not that bad. I'm going to rate this track at a 6 out of 10. It's kind of what, well, it very much is like what Take on the World for Killing Machine is for British Steel. Now, I don't mind Take on the World, but there's just something about this that's a bit cringe, to be honest. It's not a terrible track, and it was inspired by the unpopularity of the Conservative government in the early 1980s, and people, the vast population of the British public, being united against a government we felt was uncaring. Wants to send a rallying call out to the metalheads, not only in the UK but everywhere. And by the way, that's a quote directly from Rob Halford. But yeah, it's just not a good track. I wouldn't go back and listen to that. When I listen to the album, I listen to it just because it's part of the album, and especially on vinyl, you can't skip it. By the way, just if you're interested, this is an original 1980 LP from the UK. My dad got this in 1980 when it originally came out. We've got all of the original Judas Priest albums, apart from Rock-A-Roller and Sin After Sin, coming up to this point. We haven't got any of them after this. British Steel was the last one my dad got, but I have rebought Sin After Sin recently. We've also got Unleashed in the East. Oh, what a live album that is. But we're here to talk about British Steel anyway today. But yeah, United doesn't really sit well on this album. It's a real shame because the first 4 tracks on side 1, you look, Rapid Fire, brilliant. Metal Gods, great. Breaking the Law, awesome. Grinder, awesome. United, yeah, not great. Anyway, we're moving to side 2 now. Track 6 out of 9. You don't have to be old to be wise. What a great track. Longest track on the album to open up side 2. Just comes in just over 5 minutes, and it's far better than its predecessor. It gets an 8 out of 10 because it's a little bit commercial. It's that kind of, and I'm going to do this in the right way, not to offend anybody, a bit of a two-finger presentation to the older generation, just to kind of say up yours, or maybe a slightly more... what's the word? A slightly more explicit display of that rather than up yours, but I think you know what I mean. But nonetheless, a good track. One I don't listen to that often. I feel like there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 6 tracks on the album I go back to a lot. If you're interested, United, this track obviously, and Steeler being the ones I don't go back to an awful lot. But this is a bit of a return to form, especially from United, so an 8 out of 10. Now move on to the other big single, track 7. Living After Midnight, Rocking to the Dawn. What another cracking track. Obviously very pop rocky, if you like, much like Breaking the Law was. But I feel like I can listen to Living After Midnight. I think there's a little bit more to this in terms of depth. I know that this track was inspired by, I can't remember which one of the guitarists it was, but Rob Halford was trying to get to sleep when they were recording it, and one of the guitarists was just playing riffs. It might have been... I think it was Tipton, but might have been Downing, I can't remember. But they were just playing riffs at like 12 o'clock, and Rob Halford looked at his watch, and it was midnight, and basically that's, living after midnight, rocking till the dawn. That's kind of the inspiration behind that song, if you like. But it's catchy, commercial, but you can't deny its quality, so I give this a 10 out of 10. And I just think it's got that little bit more quality over Breaking the Law. Personally, it's a track I prefer, hence why it gets a 10 out of 10. And the penultimate track on this album also gets a 10 out of 10. This is probably could be the best track on the album, arguably, in my opinion, and that is The Rage, a real heavy metal track, a real underrated track on the album, because it's got what I think are Rob Halford's best vocals on the album. I really do think so. That range of pitch, it's brilliant. It starts off with an almost reggae feel, which is very bizarre, but Downing's solo work is absolutely fantastic here, and a real heavy feeling, which is quite reminiscent to the start of the album, of course, with Metal Gods and Rapid Fire. And The Rage is really a track that, it's nice. I don't listen to it that often, but when I do, I just think it's awesome. Metal Gods and Rapid Fire have got a little bit more of a commercial sound. I feel like that maybe this is the most uncommercialised track on the album. I don't know if you get that feeling as well, but yeah, The Rage is probably my favourite track on the album, and that gets, because of that, a 10 out of 10. And then finally, track 9, we've got Steeler, which admittedly I hadn't actually heard up until I listened to this album in full, which would have been maybe a few months ago now. But a great high-tempo track to round the album out. Not one I listen to too often. For some reason, don't really know why. Maybe after this review, I might listen to it a bit more. But I find it's very similar. I don't know if it was meant to be, but I don't know if Electric Eye on Screaming for Vengeance was worked off this track. I'm not exactly sure, but it sounds very, very similar. But it's a very catchy track, so I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. But all round, apart from United, the one dud in there for me at least, it's a real well-rounded album. I feel like Stay in Class is probably the only album that can trump this in terms of having a selection of better tracks. I mean, I haven't listened to all of Priest's stuff. Listened to most of it from Sad Wings up to British Steel, but it's a real solid album. One I can go back to pretty regularly and always enjoy. So I've given this album a rating based off the average of the ratings that I've given each track, and it comes out rather surprisingly. I mean, it might not be surprising, but it comes out at a 9 out of 10. If I hadn't included United, I wonder what it would come out of, but it comes out at a 9 out of 10, a very, very solid effort. So just my final comments before we round off. The end of an era for Judas Priest really here, because we went into point of entry next. We entered the 80s, which, you know, you can say what you want. I know a lot of people like the Screaming for Vengeance to Painkiller run, or maybe the run. I don't know what run people like, actually. I know that Turbo and Ram It Down weren't too well received, but I know that a lot of people like Screaming for Vengeance and Defenders of the Faith. Two albums, personally, I haven't listened to, but I know a lot of people like those two albums that come after Point of Entry, which are just scraping out the list. And to be fair, Turbo's not that bad either, but I think it's the end of an era for Priest. A great sound going into the 80s, obviously a little bit more commercial. And as I said before, probably my second favourite Judas Priest album behind Stay in Class. And what a way to enter the 80s. Probably one of the best albums of the 80s, particularly in rock. I can probably think of Back in Black, AC/DC, iconic, Ace of Spades, Motorhead, but there's not really much more springing to mind that beats this. I think that this is probably second best in my book, at least, to Back in Black, but Ace of Spades might have something to say about that. But I'm just trying to think. There might be other albums in there that I've missed out, but I can't think of them. Particularly with the groups I like. There might be groups you like that maybe spring to mind there, but I can't think of many albums that were as good as British Steel in 1980. And a 9 out of 10 rating clearly shows that. But if you've enjoyed this album review, leave a like down below. I thoroughly enjoyed putting this one together and listening to the album again. It's a real classic. And particularly during these times of lockdown and hardship, although to be fair, it's not too much hardship on me because I'm doing okay. Do you know what I mean? I'm safe, I'm staying safe and taking care and doing all the right things and being okay. So I'm happy at the moment is what I'm trying to say. But take care, stay safe all of you. If you've got any album review requests, top 10s, etc., please leave them down in the comments because I've got a lot more time at the moment. So would be free to do any of those. But check out the rest of the album reviews on the channel again if it's your first video of mine that you've seen. Subscribe to the channel. I've got reviews up of AC/DC, Pink Floyd, Queen, Rainbow as well, Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. I don't know if I've got any more bands on the channel at the moment. I've got Kiss, a few Kiss reviews as well, and a few little different reviews as well. I'm into different types of music, so whatever floats your boat, you might well be able to find here. But have a look at the channel, see what you can find that you like, if it is your first video. But if you watched every single video of the channel, fair play to you. But leave a like if you enjoyed that. Absolutely awesome album is British Steel. I'm going to get to work on doing the Stay in Class review in the next few weeks. But any reviews, pop them down in the comments that you'd like to see me do, any top 10s, etc, etc, and also leave your comments on the album. What do you think of the album? What's your best track on the album, worst track? How often do you listen to it, and where would you rank it on the Judas Priest list? I'm very interested to see in those comments, and I'll be back very soon with another album review. I rather regret it being over 2 months, but I've really enjoyed that, and hopefully we should be back for more soon. But there is going to be an end screen at the end of the video. I've got several videos, so hopefully it'll point you in the direction of something you're interested in. But until the next time, thank you very much for watching today. Go and listen to British Steel if you haven't heard it before. It's brilliant. It is brilliant. A 9 out of 10. I rarely give a rating over 8, to be honest, because on most albums there are duds that are 6 or 7 that bring the album down a lot. So 9 out of 10, that's a very good rating for me. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to stay safe during these times and rock on. See you all later. Thank you very much for watching and see you later.